Is Rosalie Little Thunder. I am Sichanhu Lakota from the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. Lakoti api michachaje kiha anum akute bingwi emachi api. My Lakota name means that I am attacked from both sides, and that was a name that was given to me by my grandfather. From the time I could remember, we were taught that we originated from the Pte Oyate, or the Buffalo people, that we dwelled under the earth and emerged as a people at Wind Cave in South Dakota. And our people depended upon the buffalo for their very survival. They followed the buffalo in their migration path, and the buffalo provided for everything we needed, from food to shelter to clothing. It was very essential for our nutrition, and we also learned its ways as we followed it in that migration path, how to live in harmony and in balance with the earth. And in doing so, depending so greatly upon this being, our spirituality evolved around it. And I was taught these things as a child and throughout my life. And only recently did it have a personal impact upon me. I heard the stories of the white buffalo calf woman who brought to us the pipe and all the teachings of how to live in a good way. She came as a white buffalo and brought these teachings, and when she left, she returned to the form of the white buffalo calf. I hear these stories, and yet I live my own life not thinking how much they would become intertwined with my own. 1 year ago, January, I was asked to help with a buffalo kill ceremony. And I was very uncomfortable with that and didn't know how to perform the ceremony, but because the person that was supposed to do it couldn't be there, and so I was left to do the ceremony. I traveled to Pennsylvania and was very nervous about this, but knew I had to do it upon the urging of two of my elders. And they told me that it's very important to remember that when you perform the ceremony, that the buffalo must surrender itself, that you must ask for forgiveness of the Creator, that the life of the buffalo was being taken with its permission to serve a good purpose. And this is the way we have always done it. And when we went through the ceremony, the last thing I did was, because the buffalo surrendered itself, and I felt that I in turn offered to do whatever I can for the buffalo. Within a short week after my return, I received a videotape of the buffalo being slaughtered in Yellowstone. It was very hard to see. When one of my elders saw it, he cried. And shortly thereafter, I received a phone call from a friend of mine in Montana that asked if I could do something to stop the slaughter. And I traveled to Yellowstone to see what the situation was, and found something very disturbing there. That this slaughter was very needless. And as I stood there on a hilltop watching the buffalo streaming down the riverside towards the border where they would be killed, I tried to talk to them, to tell them to turn back, that they were headed to death. And they walked around me and kept going. And I had a feeling then that they were sacrificing themselves for a reason I didn't understand then. Shortly thereafter, we arranged a prayer ceremony. Our people believe in releasing the spirits of those that pass to the spirit world, that their spirits may depart from their physical bodies and be free to live again. 1,000 buffalo were killed by then. We went to Yellowstone with Arvo Looking-Horse, who is the keeper of the white buffalo calf pipe that is very sacred to our people, that was brought by the white buffalo calf woman. He and Joe Chasing Horse performed a ceremony to release the spirits, to ask for prayers, to pray to the Creator, to give us some guidance on how to deal with the tragic deaths of our relatives. In an act of mockery, government officials brought down some more buffalo in very close proximity at the same time as the prayer ceremony was happening. And when I and some companions asked to pray for those buffalo, we were told to leave. In the process, I was arrested for refusing to leave, for asking to say prayers. And as I stood there looking at my dead relatives, I thought of a story that my father told me, of a grandmother that stood with her grandson watching soldiers riding into camp. This happened in 1855 along the North Platte River in Nebraska, within treaty territory. The soldiers came and fed the people washiska and achlapsuta, which is salt pork and hardtack. The grandmother asked her grandson to hide in a burrow among the tall grass near her, sensing something dreadful was going to happen. He hid, and she threw her shawl over him to hide him from the soldiers. And as the people ate, the soldiers opened fire. They shot the grandmother, and she threw herself over her shawl, again to protect her grandson. This story is told, our family's oral history is told through the boy, and he tells of the grandmother's blood dripping on him through the shawl. And he escaped, a 10-year-old boy, walking over 200 miles to find relatives and to tell them about this tragedy. And he is my ancestor. I'm here because of him. And as I stood there asking to pray for my relatives, this all came back to me. It was full circle because I stood there with my 10-year-old grandson by my side and felt what was probably what she felt. You know, a terrible sense that something was dreadfully wrong here. And ultimately I was arrested there in traditional territory of the people, the native people, trying to release the spirits of the buffalo, our relatives. I knew then that the Yellowstone buffalo were the survivors of the massacre of over 60 million buffalo in the late 1800s They were survivors, just as I was, a survivor of not only the Little Thunder massacre, but also Sand Creek and the hanging of one of my relatives at the Minnesota Uprising. And I had a responsibility to do what I can to stop this slaughter. And thereafter followed, a very hard year of being a human shield, along with many other people, between the guns of the government of Montana and the buffalo. And it brought to me that full sense that the buffalo, we and the buffalo shared a common origin. We also share a history of massacre that we don't dare forget. And we also share an inseparable destiny. Ohe Chitu.